Hi, everyone. Jane Applegath here, founder of the Epic Vision Zone, where we say life is too short to be quiet. Each show, we offer you an inspiring person or message to bring you closer to living your epic life now. Thank you for being here. You can listen to the audio version on your favorite app or watch it on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Albert Einstein wrote, "Creativity is seeing what others see and thinking what no one else ever thought." Tracy Cheney is a woman of many talents, a speaker, author, award-winning radio producer, art teacher, artist, and entrepreneur. She energizes others with the power of creative thought. Tracy says creativity is expressed in endless ways and is vital to our children's development, and being open to new ideas and perspectives is vital to our economy. With our changing world, Tracy believes the creative process needs to be taught like other thinking processes. Having spent 30 years teaching children from pre-K to 8th grade, she has seen them develop in a system that hinders many of their inherent gifts. The consequences are that many never discover their talents. Tracy asks, how does scribbling get your child into Harvard? In an age of ever-present screens, she says parents need to ensure their little ones are coloring to get ready for kindergarten. She believes the right academics and homework for the preschool crowd is early drawing that leads to reading and writing success. The simple way to design education as a method of success rather than one of frustration, Tracy says, is to view it as an organic system that continuously evolves and changes rather than one of conformity that remains immobile and static. Welcome, Tracy. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. I am so happy to talk with you today.
Well, likewise, and I love the topic that we're going to be uncovering here today, because creativity and imagination is something that, like you, is close to my heart. So let's get started. What inspired you, Tracy, to do the work that you do today?
You know, I think from 3rd grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. That was just kind of a given with me. And I had younger siblings, so it was always getting them lots of instruction. And then I loved art, and I actually had taught school for a couple of years, taught 3rd grade, and went, I should have gone to art school. But we have this thing about art, like we have to be good before we go to a class. And we wouldn't think that about French. I know nothing about speaking French, and I would go to a French class expecting to start being taught and knowing that I don't know anything. But we don't always feel that way about art. And it's because it's so judgmental, and it seems like it's so attached to our soul. And any negative comment is like on ourselves, and it can reverberate there for years and years. So I was very aware of that in myself. And I thought, I really want to go to art school. Maybe I'm ready to go to art school now that I'm 25 years old. But that was very hard because there weren't very many females in the art school I went to. And the females who were there were older, which was really interesting to me. And yet we had all these really fantastic artists that were 18 years old coming out of high school, on scholarships and things. So it was a really interesting dynamic at that time. But it just made me really aware of women and girls, and where we kind of shut down on things. But now, as I've taught for several decades, I've seen the effect on boys too. So it really made me look at what's happening in our education system. And I was very fortunate when I did have art jobs, because those are the first ones that get cut, to work with kids. So I'm with them their whole elementary career, and sometimes with their whole middle school career. And so I was seeing kids develop from pre-K through 8th grade, which has just been fascinating to watch what happens to creativity. I've certainly seen every kind of education reform come in, and education swings back and forth, and the schools having to adjust. And then what that does to certain classes like mine, where we come to think of art as fluff. And yet I know
Mm.
it's absolutely critical, and that kids come prepared for kindergarten. So we used to get ready for school by coloring with our older siblings at the kitchen table, and coloring and all of that was just a natural part of getting educated, if you will, when you're a small child, learning to color, handle a pencil, all of those things that we just learn naturally. And so my concern has been, as I've seen all the screens coming into little children's lives, well, elementary school, high school, adult lives, what it's doing to school and what it's doing to our kids' thinking. So I feel like I've just had such a unique perspective on this in being able to work with kids over years. So, like when you're a third grade teacher, you see that group for the year, and then they're gone and you have a new group. But that wasn't me. I would have them the next year and the next year. And depending on the school situation, seeing kids coming into middle school, some that had art in their school curriculum, some that did not, and how that's been impacting boys. So it's just been fascinating. Do I have concerns? Yes, I do. My message to
Right.
parents, is a hard one, because as adults, we're just as involved with the screens now.
Yes, absolutely. There is an evolution happening. And it's interesting because individuals like you and I, we have seen that it's like instead of the industrial revolution, it's the technology revolution, where we
Mhm.
have experienced the beauty of expressing ourselves with crayon to paper, and the motor skills that that involves, and the synapses in the brains, now that we know the science behind that, what it creates. And now leapfrogging to the screens today, and how there is a disconnect. And so, because of your incredible background and where you've come and where we are today, you have the wherewithal to have such valuable information to actually be a person who can say, I have experienced the difference. I have seen the difference in these children. And that is golden, because, the younger teachers up and coming, they have grown up with the screens, most of them, and they
Mhm.
haven't experienced that. So there's quite a door opening there. And I think that it's vital that our generation get into, teaching even the teachers why this is so vital. So, but thank you for that information, because I really do, like, I believe like you do, that it, the conformity of what we have in the school system, it does not encourage children to express themselves fully, and therefore not understand and discover their true talents, because like you
Well, I
said,
do
art
want
is
to.
not valued, right?
Right. So, well, what you run into is that you have school administrators who either didn't have art or didn't like it. And so that's an easy thing to just dismiss under the pressure that they're
Right.
under. And I do want to say, this is not really entirely school's fault. We've decided as a society what's important, and we keep shoving everything down to the younger and younger grades. That comes from our colleges saying, oh, they can't read nonfiction text right. And, you know,
Mm.
there's a whole lot of pressures on this. And the thing is that school is good at what it teaches. So we ask that you learn spelling, you learn reading, you learn writing, you learn all these things. But now we're in such more of a conflict with this other element of entertainment. Really, it's entertainment, and I have to say it's very seductive. And I catch myself like, how much news do I need to consume? And I was supposed to be getting this chapter done. Um,
Right.
it's designed that way. But the thing is, what we teach in school and the way that school is set up, I mean, you only have, so much time with kids, and we are just demanding more and more things that kids accomplish. At the same time, they're not coming as prepared for school. And the distraction is huge. And schools are having
Right.
to grapple with, do you let them have their iPhones? Do you not let them have their iPhones? But it's the other thing. It's the subjects that we have to teach in school that I don't want to say they're creativity killers, but they are they are topics that you can get the one right answer. So, you learn how to do things. You learn how to break apart words. You learn how to do all these things that can be measured, but also are very much going from the big to the small. But that's not
Right.
creativity. Creativity is a different kind of thinking. So that's where the issue is, that we are not teaching both thinking processes. And,
Right.
it takes a long time to learn math and to learn reading and to learn spell. I mean, it's just a daily kind of, I want to say, ritual and patterns and learning all that stuff. But creativity is going the other way. It is going towards, we want kids to have divergent thinking. We need you to have flexible thinking. We need you to be
Mm.
able to hold several different ideas in mind at the same time. That is a completely opposite thinking process. And there's so little time in school devoted to that. And then, as you mentioned, our younger teachers haven't been taught that.
Give us an idea of what is creativity then. What is it that your definition of creativity?
So, my definition might differ from other people's. In our society, we interchange creativity and imagination, and everybody has kind of a sense about it. But when I was working with kids, I just felt like we needed to be a little more specific about creativity. And I think it's helpful for adults too. So I like to think of creativity as connectivity. So you're looking
Mm.
at things, and you alluded to it in your opening statement with the quote from Einstein, but you're looking at what is and being able to things in different ways, in new ways. And it's problem solving. And, we like the quote from Edison, I learned 10,000 ways, or 9,999 ways not to make a light bulb. But that wasn't as a negative. It was, I was always getting feedback. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the right way to do it. And, I have this idea, I'm going to keep pursuing it. So creativity, I like the quote. It's one about the apple, that everybody saw the apples fall from the tree, but only Newton asked why. So that
Mm.
takes you on a creative pursuit, the why and the how and all of
Right.
that. So a couple of great examples to me of creativity in use in the movie Apollo 13. I know it's an older movie now, but when I saw it, I was like, that's creativity. So you have the astronauts up in space, and you have people on the ground who are scientists and mathematicians,
Right.
not necessarily artists and people who are always thinking about, different kinds of issues, but except that they'd put together this magnificent rocket and spaceship and all of that. So here's the imagination. It's like, what if we could fly into space? Well, creativity kind of puts it together. So in the movie, in Apollo 13, there is a crisis. And the scientists on the ground have to look at what those guys had in the capsule, be able to take what they had and put it together in such a way that they could bring them safely back to Earth. And it was just the most basic elements. And I was like, oh, that's it. Who ever thought of putting chocolate and peanut butter together and getting Reese's Pieces? There's a creative
Right.
putting things together that already exist. The printing press. Gutenberg didn't come up with something out of the blue. The coin press already existed, and putting it together with movable type, changed the
Mm.
world. So creativity, I like to look at things at the edges of stuff. What's happening in technology, or what's happening over here or over here. And that's how people bring things together and create, fantastic products. And that's what we've been great at in the US, is innovation.
Right.
So when I think
Yeah,
about imagination,
absolutely.
I like Disney's, it's like he had the Imagineers, and it's like, you just think about anything and we'll figure out how to do that. So you're thinking of something beyond what you've ever experienced, and it's never existed before. And you may have very conflicting opinions about how to get there or what you're thinking about, but you are maintaining that sense of curiosity and wonder. And see, this is what am concerned, especially now that I see babies with screens in front of their little faces and the carriers, instead of looking around, letting their eyes develop, but their thinking is developing. They're not just sitting there, not as sentient individuals. And when they are thinking and processing and putting that things together, they start to want to express that. And you see a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old start to grab for a pencil or a pen. That is them going to process this in a totally different way, making their ideas visual. And that act, picking up the pencil and pressing it to paper, you learn so much with that, but it's also directly connecting those synapses. And having a baby or a little one or kids playing games, my grandkids, that's a 2D world created by adults about what they think kids might be interested in. It's very soothing, and it works as a great babysitter, and believe me, I've used it. But that thinking, so you said we're in the technology era. Well, we're also in the creator economy. So it's the how-to, the know-how. And are we taking that away? When you take away all these other elements that actually for a lot of kids, that's where they live, is, doing the little doodles and playing with this and stacking the blocks, playing with the toy cars and all. That is thinking. That is what they need to be doing. And you're not doing that in front of a screen.
I love what Einstein said. He said, in creativity is intelligence having fun. I thought that was one of the best explanations. And then you just touched on something a little bit there, because one of my questions coming up is creativity the same as imagination? But I believe you said that the imagination is something that there's nothing there. You create something out of nothing, whereas creativity is using what's there and changing it and looking at it. So they're not the same, correct?
For me, they're not the same, but that maybe is the teacher in me needing to be able to differentiate and talk to kids and be able to explain to kids. And imagination is what might be, what could be. And,
Right.
I mean, that's great. And we want kids to be able to think that way too. And then have the stamina to be able to work through a process where you don't know what's going to happen.
You have two thinking processes that you talk about. Can you tell us what those two major processes are?
I didn't make them up. So I know that it's in the lexicon now, left brain thinking. And really the right brain thinking, this was all labeled by actually an artist, Betty Edwards, back around her first book came out maybe 78. So at that time in the 70s, that was the first really big push on understanding how the brain works and how all these functions go together. And she took that and applied that knowledge to the way that artists work and the way artists think. And just showing people the difference in, left brain thinking is like me having this conversation with you is left brain thinking, even though we're talking about some right brain things. So left brain being the kind of thinking that is precise. And that's where your reading and your math and all of that is. And school existing, most of the day kids are involved in left brain thinking processes. So the right brain thinking is, what she was bringing out. I like to use this when you're driving. You are actually engaged. If you're not, when you know your route well, you're not really paying attention to it anymore. But when you drive, you are looking at the space between things. You're having to judge that and speed, and that's why you can't talk on your cell phone, because you're trying to do a left brain process and a right brain process at the same time. And I think people kind of get that the right brain thinking is where time does not exist. And if you've ever engaged in something that you really love to do, a hobby or something, and all of a sudden you look up and wow, time just wasn't there anymore, because time is a left brain, it's a construct, that the right brain processes do have a feeling to them. And sometimes you may feel it as an aha. It's like an aha moment, or that moment that it just feels so good. And that's been identified as flow. And
Right.
I think you're coloring, I've been really interested in the adult coloring book movement, and how much, particularly women, use that as a method of, okay, I'm unwinding from the day, but actually you're really engaged in a right brain experience, that kind of artistic process. And it just feels totally, a totally different experience. So if we can realize, and again, me going back to being a teacher, how much of a kid's day is involved in left brain type thinking is completely opposite from before they came to school, because small
Mm,
children are right brain thinkers.
right.
They are not analyzing. They're not thinking about perfection. Everything looks good to them, everything that they're
Right.
producing, because they're so connected to this idea and bringing that idea out. And we cannot minimalize that. And they are experts at that. The thing is, for most kids, um, when you get to school, most of your teachers are not right brain thinkers, unless you happen to be with the art teacher or, the dance teacher, somebody in the arts. You're spending time with people who are really excellent at doing the things that school is, requires teachers to do. So if we can, you know, we talk about, wanting kids to make lists, adults too. I mean, you make a list of lots of ideas and don't go with your first idea. Okay, so that's right brain type of thinking. So we do talk about these processes, but how much time do we spend in proportion, to the two very
Right.
different types of thinking?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're correct in the processes are totally different, but it's interesting. I never would have thought that driving was a right brain process, but now that you say that, it is, because you're always calculating, and it's not something that's precise, because it's all the traffic's always going to be different, and there might be roadblocks, and there might be an accident, and there might be a person walking across the street, and there might be a dog that juts out. So it's always moving and shaping and changing things, so your mind has to be processing that. And I just found that fascinating. And you're absolutely right. When a child is young, they're completely in awe of everything. And it's
Yeah,
always, and then when of course, they learn to speak, it's always the why, the why, the why. It's like, okay, enough with the
that's
why.
age
But no,
four.
it's the curiosity, right? And that's the key to,
Mhm.
to imagination is why. Keep digging and digging. So, and speaking of that, like the scribbling and the drawing, tell us why that is so vital to a child's creative development, because I know there's some science behind that as well.
Mhm. So, as I was saying, when you have a really very young child and they are starting to reach out to express what they're thinking about and what they're seeing, it's don't take it away from them, give it to them. Put out tons of paper. Kids need to do miles of scribbling, and we used to. We're kind of lose track of the fact that we actually did a lot of coloring when we were young, because there wasn't a whole lot of other things to do to keep us occupied, right? Um, the drawing is, you are seeing where your child's thinking is, and they are taking those early steps of being able to express that. And there's very definite stages of scribbling and drawing, and kids need to be at a certain level to be ready for kindergarten, but this isn't something you can do for them. They have to do it themselves, and it's not something you can realize, oh my gosh, kindergarten's coming in a few months, oh my gosh, we've got to get drawing here. and maybe not even being aware of that. And then what we need to realize, school cannot make up what did not happen in those 3 or 4 years before kindergarten. We can't make it up because teachers have a curriculum dictated by the state that they have to do. That train is leaving the station in kindergarten. And in around 2005, the first grade curriculum got shoved down to kindergarten. So we expect far more from kindergartners than, say, when I was in kindergarten. Writing your name was a great thing that we accomplished, but now little ones are expected to be able to write sentences. You cannot do that without all the drawing that comes before, all the scribbling that comes before. So let me just tell you a little about scribbling. When a child is just first making marks, and it's like, you know, the pen, the crayon on the walls, everywhere. It's like so exciting just to have the medium. And it's like, they're not being bad, but it's like thrilling. And this thing, you know, you gradually get control of it. So that's why they've got to have lots of opportunity to do that. And gaining control of scribbling, out of the scribbling, they start constructing a story about what's happening in their drawings. So it goes from, I'm just really loving making marks all over everything, to now I'm thinking and I'm telling a story. And when your child, sometimes they'll engage with you, but not always, but it's really helpful to say, oh, you know, tell me what's going on here. And, you know, would you like to share? And when they're so intense because they're so right brain and it's such a great experience, they're not ignoring you. They are totally involved with what they're doing. So when you get to see that a child is actually naming their scribbles, then there are shapes that come out of that. And when they learn to take a shape and connect it, like you start getting circles, that's the easiest thing, and you start getting symbols. So the child is assigning, continuing to make symbols to express what they're thinking. This also takes quite a long time to get there. And can't say it's linear. It's just, it's when you're ready or when that development happens, it happens. And it may go back and forth. But what I want to see at kindergarten level to know if a child's ready for school is that they are actually drawing things that are recognizable, and they'll decide this is how a house is. And then they'll be drawing it that way for a long time. And you can't teach a small child to be a better artist. They are great artists. They, you know, so that's not what we're about. We're about them working through the different stages of drawing. So at kindergarten, they should be able to, they've come up with it themselves, you realize. And that's why they have to look at the world, is that you're putting down a line, a baseline, and being able to put things on it. So they go through a stage where everything's floating. They go through a stage where they naturally start asking you, how do I spell, or how do I write my name? Or how do I make this? That comes from being able that you are creating shapes on your own. So when we have children coming in that have not experienced this, and you're insisting that they learn how to write the alphabet, that's not coming from them internally. You're trying to do that from the outside and make a small child repeat this and stuff that they haven't come to on their own. And that's hard. And that's why we flunk kindergartners, which I totally hate. Because long ago, you know, back before 2005, when kindergartners or first grade kids would come in, and I'd work with the teachers to say, well, we have a little drawing test, and all it is drawing your family. It's not a hard test, but just have everybody draw their family. And then we could put them up like on a clothesline or spread them out on the floor and group them. And you could see the kids that were ready to learn to read because they were at that point. Right. Then I'd really look, then you have the middle kids. And so, you know, you're going to have some different work there. But then there would be kids that were, if they were drawing at the 3-year-old stage or even a 4-year-old stage. And that's, I love their drawings. It's the big, like the circle with all the arms coming out and all the many fingers. That's a particular stage that I love because you can never go back to that stuff. Although Picasso tried to go back to, you know, working at the elementary level. But So then you could see, okay, now these little ones, we don't have to wait for a year of analysis or that they don't get tested until third grade. I mean, oh my gosh, no. But we could look and say, okay, is this a learning difficulty? Is this they come from a home that just did not have supplies, or you could look at it and identify. But now you have so many kids that are not drawing at where they need to be at kindergarten. And
Right.
all I can say is, and this is from affluent homes, so then you're looking at the role that screens are playing in
Exactly.
interfering with that natural
Hmm.
process. And that's where, if I can get parents' attention to say, okay, if they've had screens, that's, I'm not being critical, but you need to give your child equal amount of a whole lot of scribbling and drawing time, because that work is their work to do. It's internal work, and you can't speed up the process. We are now in the schools, we put the cart before the horse. We're trying to leap over this, and you
Mm.
can't. School is a struggle all the way through. And,
Mm.
you know, trying to talk like with maybe a second grade parent who, their son, the math and science kids, they have informed me that they do not like art, and they aren't going to do it. And it's like, and you see it crippling and taking cursive out of schools where
Yeah.
you learn to have that smooth stuff that is directly connected to your thinking. And so I would see boys coming into middle school when I was teaching at that age. Sixth grade boys, their grip is they trying to hold a
Oh,
pencil like this. Some of them could still draw that way, but a lot of them, they're very impacted. And I began to be worried. Now, we've spent a lot of time on girls trying to get them into STEM careers. But so for the boys, where they would naturally be going into certain things, not having even the fluidity, be able to do that. And you say, well, everything can be done on computer. And to a degree, that's true. We've got programs that can do everything, and they don't need to draw as such, but there's still an impact there. And I see kids, at the sixth and seventh grade level, you cannot read their spelling tests because they haven't
mm.
been having experience writing. And yes, I'm not somebody who's studying that exactly, but it's all school has always concerned me about boys in one respect, and that is you see it at the preschool level and at kindergarten with what boys, what they play with and their spatial intelligence. And how many times I've moved and had a mover be able to come in and tell me just exactly how much stuff is in my house and what's going to fit in the moving van. That's spatial intelligence. And we don't really, there's not a lot, if anything, that works with that and develops that in boys, in the school day. So I wonder about that. I wonder about a lot of these things where it was just natural and they're doing somewhere that got developed for them. And do we provide that for them? Um, this thing
Right.
of, go ahead.
So
I can go off on a tangent. So
yeah.
just stop.
No, it's like you said earlier, it's a practice, and it's something that it's like you say, we program, our computers, but it's almost exactly the same with the human, is that we need to do certain things in order to develop those areas. And we see it as unnecessary, but the key is it's not so much that they learn how to write their signature, but it's what that provides on a deeper level to expand their intelligence and their thinking and their create and it's creative thought. And that's something that they're not practicing. It's, you mentioned about practicing certain things earlier, and it's true with what you're saying. I mean, sure, okay, we don't need to know how to sign our names because soon we'll just be using a thumbprint. But it's beyond that. It's not about learning how to write your name. It's about exercising and developing that area that we need in order to expand our program as a human being.
Yes. And if we're saying that we're in the creative economy, we have this notion that creativity belongs to a few,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see the kids in your class, the ones that are, the kind of the creative, artsy kids, right? But we cut off a huge amount of the American population that says, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. And because you think that, then, that's how we go about funding schools. But in actuality, this is what we all have, that, and we express it in many ways. It could be, cooking dinner, but you come to this belief, and I certainly find it within women. They stopped drawing about where they were at 6th grade, and so there's this whole negative thing around. I started this off with myself of taking art classes because I felt I wasn't good enough to take a beginning art class, and I'd go by the art department at college as an undergrad and going, oh, I'd really like to take some art classes, because I always felt I was artistic and taught myself to draw Peanuts characters. I learned by drawing the comics in the Sunday papers, how I learned how to draw when I was like, 5th grade. And it's such a shame because we cut ourselves off from so many things. That thinking is deep. And we think then that we're not good at these things or anything that is akin to it. Just like I don't feel I'm really good at math, and I would not be in the science or in the space program, but I have friends who are, But
Right.
this is something we have to address in ourselves, but it's
Yeah.
so important for our society. We have, I remember, it's been back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. There was a conference in Washington, D.C. about the creative economy, and a lot of hand-wringing over the fact that there were so many jobs in manufacturing and things going unfulfilled at the level where people needed to be creative. And it does impact us, because then what do other countries go, oh, what we can beat the US at is innovation, because they revamped their schools and they don't require what we're doing to our little ones, below 4th grade. They spend time in the arts. They spend a lot of time on all this stuff, on being creative, really developing the creative thinking, where it's so strong at that level before you are in school, and you have to spend a lot of time at learning the other kind of thinking and the other kind of subjects.
Speaking of creativity, give us an idea. You've got here, what does creative thinking feel like? I found that question fascinating.
It feels good. Well, not always. If you're, we need to get over the perfectionism and the fear, because depending on how, where you are in your age, that I think there's a nudge always there. And if you've been denying it, that's why I say the adult coloring book phenomenon has been so fascinating, because there is still that desire there. And I think creativity, I like going to craft fairs just to see what's evolved, how things have changed, what people are doing. So people who think they're not creative may find it in another way, like quilting or we said cooking, because there is that desire that within us as human beings, we have that desire. And when you're involved in creativity and when you're in the zone, it's just a totally different feeling. And I know you've experienced it, right? We want to get back there. How much time do we get to spend there? Not as much as we'd like to, unless you are deciding, okay, I'm going to be an artist. And then we kind of
Right.
attach to it, carving artist, or that
Oh,
somehow
yeah,
this
that's
stuff
not
is
good.
less than. Yes, that it's less than. We if we could just clear out all of this stuff
Yeah.
and realize we don't have to be good at it. If we could stop and say, well, I wasn't good at spelling in the beginning. Uh, I'm not good at, learning this foreign language. I'm not good at lots of stuff, but you keep at it. It's the same. And we can't really expect that we will have, if we could just enjoy the process of creativity and what that feels like, enjoy the process and not always having to have the perfect um, outcome, whether it's a
Right.
painting or uh, anything else, that if we can it's the process that that push and pull of, yes, I'll try this idea. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try this again. Um, let me be open. Maybe I need to take a break here and go look at some other stuff, because you can't force creativity. And, sometimes, and like with kids, it's like, okay, I only see you for 45 minutes for the week. And we're going to have this project, and the project's going to be due. And you may not have a really good idea yet. So in this situation, just get it done. Just do it. Don't
Yeah.
abandon it, because it's not going to be perfect. But,
Right.
as adults, we can, be outside of that, and just let it be. If we could,
Right.
just
Yeah, for me
just
it's
think.
creativity is a process of fun. It's when you
Yeah,
take out
should
the
be.
pressure and the chatter from your inner critic, and you just say, we're going to have fun, and we're going to experience freedom to do whatever you want. It's an energizing feeling. It's something that you fills you with joy. Being creative is you often find in the acting community, which I know you're very familiar with. When you work on a film, it's a collaborative process, and everybody is
Mhm.
working in one direction to create
Right.
something. And that when you're on a set, there is an energy that is much more lighter than, saying, working in a corporate executive office. And it's an energy that, it's because everybody's there having fun, and it's more of a freedom feeling than it is something that feels pressure. And I know there's time constraints and there's all kind of budget constraints, but you're not thinking of that when you're creating, because you're just there to experience what the outcome is going to be, which is this fabulous film or this fabulous commercial, or what, doesn't matter what it might be. I associate it with a film because I know you've worked on them, I've worked on them, and it really is. It's like the adult playground. And I know many I'm not personally, but I know actors, you get bitten by that bug, and I could see why. Because you're,
Yeah.
like you said, you're using that side of your brain, that right side of your brain. And when you feel like, you say, the art classes have gone by the wayside, and you feel like you can't take the art class because you're not good at it. But when you're in a situation where that's your job, it's like, how fun is that, to go to work and be creative or find a solution every single day? It's like, yeah, that's energizing. That's something that makes you happy. And what makes you happy is having fun. Right?
Well,
Yeah.
and some people would say, okay, it's not always fun, but I think creativity works too when you've got some parameters. So there is the whole thing of, have fun. Here's some brushes. Here's some paint. But there's always the point where you kind of want to go somewhere with it. So sometimes having those constraints, and certainly in filmmaking and all of that, you have a lot of that. Like,
Sure.
the location you wanted
Right.
doesn't work out, and you've got to be nimble enough in your
Yep.
thinking and not break down totally. And that's why we want kids to be experiencing this modality of thinking, because that's so often, in problem solving. That's why it's called problem solving, because it's always full
Right.
of stuff and
Yeah.
seeming obstacles and all that. And you need to be able to have experienced the process enough times that you have confidence you can come out on the other side. You don't know what that might be. And that's the thing. You're working with nebulous. We don't know. We hope it works.
Exactly.
And
That's that. But that entails, let's think outside the box, because you're right. The location doesn't work. The costume didn't work. Somebody got sick. It's okay, but the show must go on. Right. And
constant,
it's the same with
constant.
life. I mean, life must go on.
Well, I remember when, I think the millennials were coming into the workplace. So they were the young workers, and talking with a couple of parents who, uh, hire employees. They were going, we hired these young people because we wanted their creative ideas and we wanted them to be able to think outside the box, but they hadn't been taught. They didn't know how. They were waiting for everybody to tell them what to do and to tell them what the answer was. That was a very hard thing, and it was just a total surprise. So now what I've heard from with Gen Z coming into the workplace is they don't listen. And why don't they listen? They don't have to memorize anything. They know they can go look up whatever I'm saying. They will just wait and go look it up, and they will teach themselves. So they've learned technology, to curate the things that are interesting to them, but it has also changed how they learn and now how that comes out in the workplace. Now, these are huge generalizations, so don't hold me to this, but it's just the interesting comments in hearing it, from other perspectives, because they are thinking differently. And when they were first coming into school, so I remember asking, and we were, having some teacher conference and talking about this, and this was going to be our first generation of digital natives. And so I remember asking, well, what does that look like? What are they going to be like? What do we need to do? And said, we don't know. We won't know till we get to the other side of it. We've changed education to meet their way of wanting to be educated. But now how does that work with us who are in a different realm of thinking about stuff, right? So
right.
It does have implications. Now we have Gen Alpha. These are our kids who are 13 and below. So our last of the Gen Zs are about 13, and they were the babies when the iPad came out in 2010. And that's been a part of their life. So they're even more different than the other end of Gen Z that's now like 25, whatever. These things are slide around. But looking at them, so my nephew who's at the old end of Gen Z, and my granddaughter who is at the end, who always has had an iPad, who even though they all consume technology, it's still different. Now with Gen Z, when I see, the phones in the baby carriers, I am wondering, how does this play out?
Yeah.
How do we
It's going to be
adjust?
very interesting.
It is interesting because school is not getting easier.
No.
School is harder. And kids would say, my thinking hurts. I don't know. They didn't know how to think about things. They are, it's just we're on this very, very fast track with them. And if they're not ready for it, it makes school hard. And one thing I do want to say about kids and adults or anything else, activating creativity is picking up a pencil or a crayon and doodling. That is legitimate because that gives you access right to the right brain thinking and ideas. So when I would see kids sitting at their table and they're just sitting there and I'm going, what are you doing? I'm waiting for an idea to hit. And it's like, you can activate that. No, we can't. We don't have time to wait around. I only see you for 45 minutes. There's no time. So pencil, even if you do nothing else, but then just color. Some people, and we lose track of that with kids, because lots of them are right brain thinkers when they're young coming into school, that they actually listen when they are just making motions with crayons and things like that. They are listening. And, there are kids, I call them the popcorn kids. They are very physically active and they just need to be up and they need to be doing stuff because that is part of their thinking process. And we make everybody sit in a chair for a long time. We are aware of things. You do try to build some stuff into it, but the reality is the pressure that the schools are under to get these kids to perform on certain tests. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if we gave them art tests?
Yes, absolutely. Well, that would change the whole curriculum.
It sure would.
Yeah.
It absolutely would. And the thing is, they try to put that stuff into the test without teaching the kids over a long period of time the process. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, we've got tests coming up in a few weeks, and now we're going to spend time on learning how to break a problem apart or whatever it is. You cannot accomplish that with children. And we make our assessments of schools and teachers based on, you know, stuff that adults have put together. Say, this is important that you know, but because you don't know what's going to be on the state test, how much time can you allow, in your little bits of time? And then we're creating a school day that's very chopped up. It certainly is not the right brain process where you need time, and you need time
Yeah.
to daydream and to think. That does not exist. But that's what you
Yeah.
need as right to be on the thinking in the right brain processes.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I think that, I'm not sure if it will ever change, but there are those
No,
fortunate ones that will get that exposure that they need. And a lot of homeschooling is taking place now.
exactly.
So
That's it.
that could be the tipping point, because I feel that a lot of parents that get that involved with their children you will see a difference in those kids versus those that are going through the system, because the homeschooling has really become a whole new industry, and it's flourishing. It's really flourishing. So I wanted to move on to
It is.
creativity and the economy. So why is creativity vital to our economy, especially now more than ever?
We face huge competition from other countries that are realizing this is where they can beat us. I don't like that feeling. I don't like that at all. But when you look at the type of worker that you want, you have to provide the schooling that's going to create that worker, right? So those comments from a parent who was, concerned about his young workers not being able to think outside of the box, that's where innovation is going to come from, right? Being able to take things from different segments, put them together in a new way. And or imagination, where we're just thinking way out there. I mean, we see that in our space program. It's like, oh, let's put a rover on Mars. Okay, how are you going to get there? And having the time and the funding to be able to do that. So what do we want? I guess, when we're coming down to that, okay, if we're in the an economy that really depends on creativity, um, how are you educating your kids, right? So I just was at a neighborhood meeting. I live in Los Angeles, and we were hearing in our city there are 7,000 jobs unfilled, and that's why things are slow and things don't get done, and all of that. And looking at the training that was needed for those jobs and all of that, can we get people there?
Right.
Are we willing to provide that? Are you willing to give the time that it takes to be able to develop those kind of workers? Um, we, we shoot ourselves in the foot when we take all those things away. It doesn't matter if we're talking from kindergarten through college. We are spending a long time on creating the people that we need to be in our economy to take our places, we can't even imagine the jobs of the future. They keep
Mm,
coming, all these new
right.
jobs that are developing in technology and all of that. Who could have even thought about those 5 years ago? It's just
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, forward thinking that we need to have for our economy to be strong. Now, I know there's a push, okay, we're bringing manufacturing back, and I agree with that. But what got sent overseas were a lot of jobs that either could be mechanized, or that were the jobs that were routine and that kind of thing. And so, okay, yes, let's bring back all of that, but we still need to really pay attention to American innovation, because
Right.
that's what we've got to lead in.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And therein lies the imagination and creativity, because that's where that's the future. Innovation is the future. I mean, it's always been, from the horse to the car, to the airplane to, it just goes on. And without those, you and I wouldn't even be here talking, because look what we're talking on. you know
It's
Internet connection,
phenomenal.
Zoom. Exactly. It's all from innovation. So, well, thank you
And
for that
need and
insight.
need.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
exactly.
our Zoom came from, I mean, the day that all the schools were going to close down, having a meeting, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to keep this going? And somebody said, well, there's this thing called Zoom, which nobody had really heard of. The only thing we had at that time was Skype. Look, that was just 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had to learn really fast, and Zoom had to learn really fast. And I wish I'd bought technology stock with it. Um, Everything had to, all of a sudden, we lived at the end of the line, and with everybody coming on, we had grandkids who got stuck with at spring break with us and ended up being here for a long time, and computers, and my husband and I both trying to teach online, and we were at the end of the line, and all this stuff coming on, and glitches, and we had to learn so much so fast. And look how everybody responded to that. Now,
Hmm.
it's changed our workplace. It's changed what we have expectations of being able to our pajama bottom. Changed so many things. It changed community. It changed outreach in just that short amount of time due to an emergency. But all that creative thinking, everybody getting up and working together uh, on our end, learning it and trying to figure stuff out just for the love of our students and all. But look what changed, for the better,
Yeah.
for the worse. I mean, it kind of meets some people's desires that, didn't want to have to be out among people. Um, it provides access for seniors to get things that they, may not have been able to participate in. We have an expectation that you will record things so I can look at it when I have time. And I consume so much more information now than I ever did, because I'll have to wait and, watch things, and keeps me up late at night. So here was a moment that we all just experienced together. When you were talking about making a film, I'm thinking about this communication thing to keep everybody running. Um, we all did that together, and
Right.
that it's amazing to be on the other side of it now. Now, without all the constraints that were in place, and to meet the need. Now, look, there's going to be all kinds of stuff that's going to come out of this. People will take it and run with it in all kinds of ways. I mean, AI, haven't we all just
Right.
experienced 6 months of what is this to, oh my gosh, I have to learn something new because I have to keep up.
Oh, and
you
that's
know,
just the beginning.
well,
There
I
is,
can't
it's
imagine.
just, it's going now at the speed of light. It's exponentially, I mean, there's things that we don't know, but have already been developed. So it really is a changing world, and it's moving extremely fast. So therein lies the ability to use our right brain, because our right
Mhm.
brain is the one that can be flexible, the one that can say, okay, I can't do that anymore, but maybe I can do this. Or how do I look at this in a
Exactly.
positive way? So, yeah, absolutely. Creativity and imagination are not just for the innovation, but it's also to be able to bounce with the world that is
Mm-hmm.
moving at the speed of light. Because otherwise, if you get rooted in your past, which in these days is like a month ago, when you're thinking of technology, you're behind. And it's like, well, you don't want to think that way. So you want to be able to access that space that you can just say, okay, I've got to go with the flow here. And in order to go with the flow, I need to access that other side of my brain, because otherwise my left brain is going to say this doesn't compute, because it's not something where I've been before. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really fascinating where we're going, and how fast there. Yeah, absolutely. So if you thought that getting on Zoom and whatnot during the pandemic was a big shift, just wait for the next year, and you'll look back and go, "Wow, that was nothing." But anyway, Tracy, I would love to have people know where they can connect with you, find your book, and also your blog.
Oh, I wish I had time to write my blog. Yes. So I have it at tracycheney.com, and Cheney is Cheney. And there is a preschool book and a gardening book, and I'm always working on a lot of different things. But that is the best way. As far as that website would be my most general website, right? I do have things like helping older women find work, and I love the preschool set. So I gardening. I I
Right.
like to, and that's what we all should be doing. It just we don't have enough time in the day to do everything that we like to do. But if you do something that you like to do, and that you are feeding your creative soul, that's what you need to be doing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love that. So, and all of that information will be on the Epic Vision Zone bio pages. And because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone, Tracy, I have one last question for you. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
mm, Gosh, that's an interesting question. I would say, I want to say, tries everything.
Mm, I love that.
I will
That's
dabble. Maybe that's the
try.
title, Dabbler.
I will dabble. I love it. I would pick that up for sure. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much again, Tracy, for joining us here today. And for information, once again, to connect with Tracy, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where you will find all of her social media and direct contact information. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. And don't forget to connect with me at janeapplegath.com, where you can access your free downloads, Creative Power, and Vision Play Sheet. Sending you so much love and gratitude. This is the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dreams into epic success.